Well, do you want to bear the brunt of the a description of this past week's Raw program? Because certain things happened that affect the ongoing future of the WWE, shaking the literal foundations of the company, possibly forever. Yeah.
I said some sarcasm. What's your problem with Raw?
Well, you know what? Did you notice now? I went back and watched the replay. I found out that if you wait long enough, not only are there no commercials in the replay of Raw on Netflix, but also when you try to fast forward, a box pops up that shows you what you're missing or not missing so you can decide whether to miss or not miss that, which is not available if you try to go back within a certain amount the first day, or I don't know what the time cutoff is. Does this happen to you?
I tend to watch it live when possible.
Well, fuck, I would never do that type of thing. But nevertheless, apparently without commercials, it was only an hour and 50 minutes long. This past week, October 20th, I believe was the date. And
how long? An hour 50?
Hour 50 or something, 50 something.
Apparently, if you take it,
as they say.
Apparently, if you take out the matches, it's an hour 45.
Well, that's the thing, is they didn't really pack a lot more into a shorter period of time. They just did less of the stuff they normally do. However, we are in this new era where it's the where did all the stars go era. They're pushing the bronze, Breaker and Reed, and I appreciate that because they are new, legitimate top talent that needs to be utilized in this fashion. So I'm fine. But again, in between these things, you got to sit through some other things. And they had one match that I want to talk about. So nevertheless, point is they start the program with Adam Pearce. He's starting to speak when on the screen, it takes forever for an SUV to pull up and Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman to get out. And they just walk to the ring. And they show them walking to the ring. And they're going to stretch everything out as long as they can get out of everything. But Pierce really reads them out. He tells them Seth Rollins is hurt. And he kind of skips. At first, he says, well, he was banged up anyway, but now he's really hurt. And then because of what you guys did, what you two did, we're stripping Seth of the World Heavyweight Championship. We're going to crown a new champion in Salt Lake City at Saturday night's main event. CM Punk won the right to be the challenger and said now, since the title is open, it's going to be Punk against the winner of a battle royal for the other slot. And that battle royal is tonight. And that got a big pop because they got booed when he mentioned Salt Lake City, which, to be fair, is unpopular almost in all social circles. Salt Lake City. For that matter, the whole state of Utah is not exactly invited to most people's dinner parties. But I guess they got to do what they got to do. But before we go anywhere else with this interview, Brian, were you jazzed up to hear about a battle royal to determine a contender for the other contender to fight for the vacant title? I know they do it in AEW, 17 times a week, but this is kind of, they do it here too. And it's, what do you think?
It's very AWA in my eyes. They gave their world championship to the battle royal winner when Larry Zbyszko won it in '89. It just always feels, battle royals feel like you should win a prize, not necessarily a match. And boy, did this Saturday night's main event just sneak up on us. This is next week.
Is it?
November 1st.
Well, son of a bitch. Well, I was about to ask you when it was, but you told me. So now I know. God dang. God dang.
So what do you think of this in terms of, this is the first follow-up to them turning on Rollins? Did you think this is an effective way to start the episode?
Well, they started this way and then going all through, and we'll talk about the whole story all the way through and then hit another high point. But at this point, Pierce was telling Braun Breaker, and now that's not your property because he's carrying the belt. You got to hand the belt over. And they didn't, what if I don't? And Paul conferred with Braun, and Braun's like, show me some respect. And then he makes Pierce it respectfully, and he just hand it over, say, please. He repeats it, please. And Braun Breaker gives the belt to Paul, and Paul gives it to Pierce, and Pierce walks off. And then Paul starts cutting the promo. This is the way Paul cut a heck of a promo here to answer your question on, is it a good way to use them? Paul cut a heck of a promo here, elevating these guys, mentioning their importance. You know, he said that he pulled those moves at WrestleMania that had nothing to do with Rollins, is because Braun was the future. And Bronson Reed is better than Roman Reigns. And he tore Seth down and called him a bum shoulder bitch. And they bleep bitch on Netflix. Weren't we promised we could get to hear fuck and cooties and every other kind of horrible word on Netflix at one point?
They definitely made it sound like we don't have to be worried about language anymore. Meanwhile, on AEW, they say shit and all sorts of stuff. Tits.
Yeah. But anyway, Paul's promo put Bronson and Braun over big as having what it took to be main eventers. It was a good heel promo. I think it just, again, the only thing is this took like 20 fucking minutes, and anything just takes a while to get done on this program. But with Seth on the sidelines, the old Eddie Graham principle, how do I get somebody over Dusty? Dusty's got to go somewhere. Seth on the sidelines, the attention being put on these two, and then later on, I believe that was the next installment in our story. Yes, Pierce tells Paul that the two Brauns are out of the Battle Royal. And then Paul has to beg kind of, you know, and grovel like that Pierce did earlier to get the belt. Paul has to grovel to him.
Yeah, say please, same line.
Yeah, say please. Oh, please. And then Pierce said no and slammed the door on him. If they both couldn't win, they want to go in a different direction. So it was important to not just have these two in the Battle Royal as two guys that almost made it, but whatever the fuck, right? There's bigger things in store for them. And then Becky came up and got in Paul's face, and Paul did the groveling to her, and, you know, again, switches gears back to the humana. And Becky told him off at his penguin-looking self or whatever she said to him. But even though Becky's a heel, she's also Seth's husband. So I think somebody asked the question, or we brought it up on one of the shows recently.
Yeah, last week. Yeah.
You know, what about Becky being a heel since Seth has been turned on? If she's just wrestling other girls, it shouldn't, she shouldn't really show any change, because when Seth comes back, she's going to be a babyface with people anyway, and possibly sooner than that. So it wouldn't be out of the way for her to get involved with somebody that's fucking with these guys just for the sake of it. And in that case, she'd be a big babyface, but she doesn't need to change anything. That's the good part about this. She can still do her programs with the other girls, whatever the fuck. She may end up getting cheered more, but she doesn't need to flip-flops, what I'm saying.
Do you think there's anything to be said for the idea of Braun refusing to give up the belt, and they go through everything they have to do to get a new champion, but you have an issue where Braun still has the belt?
Well, no, because I don't think they want to press that this quickly, because they did this in a rush. They weren't going to do whatever they're going to do
Right.
until Seth got hurt. So let's let it breathe a little bit, because that puts him in a position where sooner or later somebody that is the real champion needs to come after him, and they ain't got it set up yet. It would have to come after him, is what I'm trying to say, and they haven't got it set up like that yet. They want to take a little more time with Braun. So he's just over here getting more and more pissed off at the situation.
Maybe we can get Becky versus Heyman. Maybe in a sumo match.
But no, well, remember, now that might work. Because I was going to say, remember, I had Heyman 35 years ago, and I wouldn't wish that on Becky, much less with the shape he's in today. Damn. Anyway, then, as a matter of fact, in the back later on, the Brawns were not happy, and Braun Breaker Paul comes in, and Braun say, hey, help me understand this. And the thing about Breaker, he can talk. He explains things well. He wasn't screaming and being over the top here. He was relating details, which normally is not you guys' strong points, especially early on. He can talk. But then Paul gave him the bullshit pep talk about how he helped Brock because he listened to him, and he helped Punk because he listened to him, and he helped Roman because he listened to him. It's not just in the ring, it's backstage politics. What's the future of the WWE, guys? Just look in the mirror. And walked out and left them smiling without saying anything of substance. But then they had the battle royal for the opponent versus Punk for Saturday night's main event for the title. And Punk was on color. And let's face it, it was a fucking battle royal. I skipped down to Dominic, LA Knight, AJ Styles, and the Usos. 4 baby faces and fucking heel. But the Usos are having issues with each other because Jay's looking up to Roman, but Jimmy don't want him to look up to Roman. I got it right, didn't I?
I think you got it exactly right, yeah.
Well, good, because sometimes I still have trouble with which is which on there. But anyway, LA Knight was about to knock Jay off to the floor, but Jimmy saved Jay, which was the second time he'd saved him in the match. And then helped him up, and they double super kicked AJ, and Jimmy dumped AJ. And then LA Knight and Jimmy ended up dangling over the top rope, and Jay came from behind and dumped both of them. So Jimmy saved Jay twice, and then Jay dumped Jimmy along with LA Knight when he had the opportunity. And then Dominic went for the 619 on Jay, but Jay dumped him and won the whole thing. So now, but again, it's all the baby faces. But now we're going to have Punk and Jey Uso, who faced off with each other, after this thing was over with, for the title, which I assume, and one would think, Punk is going to win. Not only because Jay had it long enough to say he had it, but he wasn't, he's the yeet guy, but he wasn't the long-term answer as a world champion or even another short-term. And he and Jimmy have trouble involving their relationship with Roman, so one would think that might play some kind of a part. I've seen people speculate, well, should they turn Jay heel? And with the entrance and the merchandise and the way people like him, I don't see why they would want to do that, but I don't see why that they would want to put him in a position where he's having to wrestle one of the biggest merchandise sellers and the guy that they chant for in the whole company, CM Punk. But here we are. Brian, was there a question there that I asked you?
No.
Well, let me try one.
Yeah, I don't think there was. Was there?
We think Punk needs to win this. We don't need to put the belt back on Jay, do we? Doesn't Punk need to win this for potentially some type of interaction with Heyman's vision at some point soon or something?
Well, let me say this first. I wish Punk wasn't so over because I'm kind of getting sick of babyface Punk. I'm ready for him to just be evil and do some sick shit and cut some mean promos. But he's super over and you can't change it right now. It'd be stupid. He, you would think, would be the person set up for the belt. It sets Seth Rollins up for a conundrum if he's still the champion when he comes back, because does he go after the belt and the man he hates in this endless feud, CM Punk? Or does he go right for the bronze and Heyman? I don't think Jey Uso should get the belt again. It's weird. He was world champion just yesterday, and it doesn't even feel like that. It just feels like he kind of went right back to where he was. And I'm not saying that's the wrong place for him to be. However, I think Punk is sometimes more effective chasing than having as a babyface. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, since they're all interacting on the same show in the same space, I'm wondering if they want to coronate Braun Breaker, if Punk, a win over Punk for a major title might not be the way to do it. But I might be getting ahead of myself because they might not be ready to do it then.
Has anyone said how long Rollins is supposed to be out for?
No, but when they say major surgery, one would imagine that at this point in time, WrestleMania would be pushing it.
Did he break his femur? I really don't know. Major surgery. A guy had his brain removed and put back in his head and returned to the ring.
Well, no, but the shoulder reconstruction, we had November, December, January, February, March. Didn't they make WrestleMania later in the year, next year?
Or late April, yeah. Mid to late April.
5.5 months. It may be doable, but, they may not know in time to make concrete plans that they feel comfortable with. Who knows?
Do you think Seth Rollins should get stem cell treatment?
No, I think he should leave part of his body to medical science and then the other part to science fiction. All right, there was one other thing on this show. The tag team title changed hands. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. AJ Styles and Dragon Lee beat Finn Balor and JD McDonough.
This was great. Did you watch this?
Yes, I did, because you mentioned to me that you thought it was a good match, and it was. And here's the thing. The knock on AJ Styles for years was he was too small, and he looked like Lex Luger next to the other three of these guys. But they all look like athletes. Finn is ripped. JD's in shape. Dragon Lee, well, he's there. But at the same time, they had a good match, but in this environment, in this universe, no pun intended, in the WWE, this is still a mid-card title, and they're being presented as the athletic guys to go out there and put some time in between the stars doing promos. And I'm wondering, since Tony Khan had an unlimited budget, as we've come to find out, could spend as much money as he wanted to. And if he hadn't taken advice from people as diverse as Uncle Dave and Kenny and the Cucamonga Kids on hiring all their friends and favorites, is this what AEW could have been? Smaller guys that are in shape and trained well, that are athletes, that have good looking work, that's a faster pace and more serious matches that make sense, and no indie garbage, no, ridiculous comedy. Is this what these four guys outperformed 90% of the AEW roster when it comes to professionalism, executing the moves with a safety factor where nobody almost gets killed. There's no furniture. They kept it in the ring. Is this I guess what I'm saying was if Tony had concentrated on a coherent plan to have a general style of wrestling and offshoots that may complement that general style of younger, faster paced guys, better athletes doing more shit than the other company without resorting to the comedy, haha, the silliness and the garbage. Is this what AEW might have been? Were these guys who can't be stars in this environment because of the way that everything else is presented? And yes, I know Finn's been a champion, but I'm saying they can't be, neither one of the four of these guys can right now at this point in time be the top guy or one of the top singles guys in WWE. But they can't be presented that way on this television. Since they're all talented, if they were presented that way on another television, would these guys be able to be top stars in that environment? Is this maybe what AEW could have been if they weren't just all friends with a bunch of indie wannabes?
I don't know, because at the end of the day, it also comes down to the management and Tony and the roster he picked, but this is what it probably, in a lot of ways, should have been as an alternative, but WWE adopted a lot of the things that became popular on the indies and which led to AEW. The other thing is, people sometimes jump on you, especially, for pointing out someone smaller. You brought up Marco Stunt earlier. That's an extreme example. But Jack Perry, Young Bucks, there's been a whole bunch, Daniel Garcia, a whole bunch of examples. Wheeler Yuta. It doesn't mean short, necessarily. There are lots of wrestling greats that were short. They didn't wrestle like it, and they looked like athletes, like you said. So JD McDonough, what is he, 5'7", maybe at the most? Finn Balor, maybe at the most? But they look like athletes the same way in his day Wild Red Berry would have looked like an athlete. You know what I mean? Danny McShane wasn't a big guy. But there's a difference.
Finn Balor looks better than the Dynamite Kid did at his body weight, more ripped, but before Dynamite discovered heavy steroids. But it's not about height or weight or even height and weight. It's about the height with the weight, with the build, and the aura that you project.
Yeah, Marco Stunt, in the early days of AEW, when you criticized him, some of the feedback you got, and I think even from Dave Meltzer, was, well, Rey Mysterio's only 5'2". How could you just dismiss someone for being small in stature? And your argument was, not everyone's Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yeah.
That was a special talent. He wasn't just one of many. He was one of one. Why are we?
And then there were people on Twitter putting up pictures side by side where even Ray still looked like goddamn Lex Luger physically next to Marco Stunt.
But yeah, I thought this was a really good match. AJ's having a little bit of a moment. With the fans anticipating the winding down of his career, the Cena match, the reaction in Japan that I read about. And here, AJ's kind of having a little bit of a renaissance here at the end.
Well, he's a renaissance man. And
did you see Dominic?
But that was, oh yeah, and Dominic beat Rusev here on this program.
Well, did you see he got a neck tattoo now?
I didn't actually look close enough to notice that.
He's another one of these guys.
Well, between his full body outfit and his long hair, and I wasn't looking at his neck. I don't know. What am I, a vampire?
Stop doing this. Unless you're going to start a punk band or something. Stop getting tattoos on your fucking necks, guys. Jesus.
But they were in Southern California, or is that Northern California? Where is Sacramento? They were in California, so they loved Dominic a lot more than many places.
But you didn't. But just one last thing about the tag match. You didn't think it was. What exactly are you saying? You don't think it's all that special? You just thought it was okay? What
no, I thought that's the thing is it's a it was a great wrestling match, and it was athletic, and it was serious, and these guys looked great, and all of the accolades and platitudes that I gave them. But it's still, unfortunately, in this presentation and in this company right now and on this talent roster, they've middle carded the tag team title to where it's not. Now, if AJ Styles and Dragon Lee have a matchup coming in the next, month or whatever the fuck with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and they lose the tag team titles to them, and then they start working against if the Usos are still together or if top baby faces want to team up, then you can elevate it again. But that's what I'm saying. It was a good match. But if you advertised it, and nobody would, necessarily break down the gates to buy tickets to see it because it's not a featured position. But athletic, smaller guys doing a faster paced style, we thought that might be what AEW was going to be before they went all crazy on us with flamethrowers.
Well, that was WWE Raw.
But, they're doing half as much, Brian, in the WWE as they used to in the ring and on TV, but they're charging twice as much for us to see it. Did you hear about the newest study that's apparently WWE ticket prices